Hey there, class. Happy final week of our marketing class here. Um, it's Tuesday. Hope you had a nice Memorial Day. Um, Obviously, this is the last week. We've got, I guess, a day short week, but hopefully not a problem for you guys to get finished up. If you do have any issue, please schedule an office hour or reach out to me via email. Happy to help. I want to make sure that you are uh, completing all of your assignments. Obviously, we've got the last one due for this week, but if you skipped past weeks, submitted the wrong assignment, something like that, please redo them this week. I will give you partial credit. And getting partial credit versus getting a zero will help your grade considerably. So please go back and do those assignments if you haven't already. All right, so what do we want to do today? Well, I'm going to go through the homework that was submitted and talk about that a little bit. And then I'll briefly talk about what you should be putting together for the final. The final in general is kind of taking what we've got already and really distilling it. So you've got the majority of the work, I would say, done, and now it's time to like compress it into a story. So here's where I want you to like cut, improve, take some of the feedback that you've heard, apply it versus trying to necessarily make something anew. We're going to try to squeeze and distill whatever we can out of what you've got already. Okay, let's talk about the assignments that were turned in. So I do have some examples to take a look at, but I just want to talk about one thing that I've noticed in general, and actually play a video from a short talk that I did a few years ago that I think addresses a lot of what I've seen. So one thing I noticed is, so like everybody basically did a 4-week plan, and I'm pretty sure that 4-week marketing plan was in one of the videos in one of the templates. So I think I know where that came from. And a 4-week plan, like in some respect, is okay. There's nothing necessarily wrong with a 4-week plan, right? It gives us like a marked kind of step of progress of a customer moving through our funnel. I think the thing to think about is like, is your business actually a 4-week plan? Is a 4-week sales cycle realistic for a customer to discover your product and become a customer at the end of 4 weeks? And are you as a business willing to essentially kick that potential customer out of your funnel at the end of that 4 weeks if they do not buy? Because if they don't buy and you're unwilling to basically kick them out, you don't really have a 4-week funnel. There's additional steps, beyond that would, produce a customer. So like, I think idealistically this 4-week cycle is nice to think about. In practice, my feeling is like it's not really realistic. And most people, once they have somebody in the top of their funnel, like after 4 weeks, if I was like, oh, well, are they out? Are we not going to continue marketing to them? You're probably going to be like, oh, well, no, they actually, reinsert here, or maybe they're actually not as far down the funnel as I was, saying, or whatever. Perhaps it takes longer for somebody to move through a funnel than what you're truly representing. Okay, so one thing I wanted to take a look at, and we'll bump back into a couple of examples that, again, I think like you guys are doing good. There's nothing wrong with this. It's more me being like, oh, I should have spent more time, talking about some of these things previously, and maybe just kind of the asynchronous format of this class makes it a little bit difficult to get that real time feedback. So I want to take a look at this video, and then we'll take a look at a couple of examples that I think there are some good things, and I think there's some takeaways. So we'll take a look at a couple of those. So the first thing I wanted to look at is, and this is from my my PDF book Come on. Why is this? What's going on here? I was trying to share my screen. It's not working. Let's see if this is going to work. We got it. Okay. This is from my PDF book. And this is the customer acquisition funnel. Okay. And I talked about this a little bit last time, but maybe what I didn't talk about was the profitability equation. And the profitability equation is something that we use to assess whether or not our marketing campaign on a per user basis is profitable or in our benefit or producing returns. Now, like basically, are we putting dollars in our pocket when we spend money, outbound marketing? And, the thing about this is, so in an ideal business, we get back more money than we put in when it comes to marketing. We're not losing money by marketing. Now, like if you're starting out, that may not be the case. Like you may actually be losing money on your marketing campaign to get the just the wheel started or to learn something or whatever. You may not have like a well-oiled machine yet. So like this is aspirational. It's not necessarily where you'll find yourself. But like hopefully it makes sense that like we want more money to come out of the machine than we have to put in, because if we don't, we're eventually going to run out of money. So at some point this needs to be true. It doesn't necessarily have to be true right out of the gate. So what this says is that our profitability equation says that our lifetime value, which I'll explain in a second, needs to be greater than our customer acquisition cost in order for our marketing to be profitable. So what lifetime value is, or LTV, LTV is basically it's the average amount of profit generated by a customer in our system. So if we think about a customer in our system, so let's think about I like using a yoga class because in some respect it's like a simple quote unquote business, but I think a lot of people can maybe understand it easily. So with our yoga class or our yoga business, so what it might look like is what we may be selling is, let's say we're selling classes, and let's say we're selling like weekly classes. That's just what it looks like. Come once a week, something like that. Or we could be selling monthly subscriptions. Let's go with monthly subscriptions. So we're selling subscriptions to our yoga business, and we've got a funnel, right? We're social media marketing. We're getting their email. We are sending them content, and we're hoping that they buy. Okay, that's what our campaign looks like. And you'll see that looks a lot like what is up here, where we're generating leads via social media. We're capturing their email address. We're dripping out media content to them to, hey, come by, or whatever, not come by, but whatever. Here's a lesson. If you want the full one, join or whatever. And then ultimately they drop out when they become a buyer. Okay, so that's our process. So hopefully that aligns with what I'm talking about here. And basically, so our lifetime value on that, like if you think of somebody signing up, now our average customer, so when I say average, I mean if we took a look at 100 customers, what does the average one look like? Now, the average customer does not have your subscription for forever. They just don't. It's impossible because some people will try it for a month and drop off, and some people will stay on for forever, whatever forever means. But what that means is like the average customer is somewhere between 0 and infinity months of being a customer. Okay, so it's somewhere between 0 and infinity is what the average length of somebody that falls in our customer into our funnel and buys. That's the average length of time that they are a customer. So let's say it's 10 months. Okay, and let's say I'm just picking a number out of the air. It's 10 months. That's the average lifetime. We sell subscriptions for $30 a month. It costs us $20 a month in cost to simply it costs us $20 a month to operate our business. So, whatever that means, we've got the studio that we have to pay for. We've got our online platform, whatever. We've got those costs for actually running operations. So we make $10 a month in profit per customer. Okay, now, like, that's a difficult number to come through, because what I'm saying is you need to assign costs on a per customer basis. And obviously, costs for a lot of people, costs are going to scale per customer. So the more customers you get, the costs kind of decrease, but you're going to need to pick a number. And we're going to need, like, we kind of just make these things up and we say, all right, well, I need to get to 50 customers for this thing to actually be, realistic. But whatever, we pick numbers and we come up with these kind of these general equations that are, all right, that feels comfortable to me. So again, I'm coming up with that. We're going to make $10 a month in profit for every customer that we sign up, and their average life within our business is 10 months. So that means on average, once a customer is in our system, we make $100 per month $100 total in profit. All right. So what the profitability equation says is our customer acquisition cost needs to be less than $100, or else we're losing money. That's it. That's what it says. We need to, our lifetime value within, which in this case is 10 months times $10 of profit per month, $100, needs to be greater than what it cost us to produce that customer, to get them all the way through this funnel and drop out the bottom. Otherwise, this thing is upside down and we will never make money. Okay. Now, there's ways that we calculate this, that customer acquisition cost. It depends on your funnel. In this case, at each one of these interstitial layers, so when we move from lead gen to contact capture, when we move from contact capture to drip, so when we move, there is a drop-off rate, or there is actually a success rate in this case. So what is the percent of customers that we're capturing the lead? What is the percent of customers that we're capturing the email? What is the percent of customers that are seeing our content from the drip and becoming buyers? Okay, what are the success rates of each one of those cases? We divide that by our cost per click initially. So what we're actually buying here is like Google ads. Those cost us real dollars. They cost us on a per click basis. So if it's 10 cents per click, we move through the math, and that'll tell us what is our customer acquisition cost with that funnel. And then we can compare it to that $100. All right. That is how the math works on this stuff. Now, this is not science. This is art math. This is, it's not perfect because these things do not line up exactly like this, but this is a way of thinking about, like, oh, is my funnel effective? Is my product effective? Is my funnel and my product and how I make money aligned? So that's what you want to think about when you think through this stuff. All right. So what I want to do is I want to pop up a video that kind of walks us through the math, and we'll take a look at this, and I will comment on this as we work through it, or as I go through it. Okay. So this is managing your business for profit. 5 years old at this point. Let's take a look.
Today we're going to be talking about business profitability, and really how to think about the activities you're undertaking, and are they producing a profitable outcome for your business? Because at the end of the day, that's what matters. So to do so, we're going to take a look at the profitability equation. And what the profitability equation says is that revenue needs to be greater than costs. So the amount of money I make by doing my business, selling my product or service, needs to be greater than the costs that go into that business. Pretty simple. So let's actually expand that out a little bit to be a little more granular. So what is revenue composed of? Well, really, revenue is composed of profit plus expenses. So the amount of surplus we get by selling our good or service plus the amount that needs to go into creating that good or service. Then costs are composed of marketing, so the amount of effort that we need to put in to sell our good or service, plus everything else. So COGS, overhead, all of that gets clustered into everything else. So what we're going to do here is we're actually going to set expenses equal.
So maybe the one thing I want to say here, so if you notice, like this is kind of like fuzzy math. In some respect, this is like conceptualizing these ideas. If you look on the left, profit and expenses, like profit and expenses is kind of like the accounting side of the equation, and marketing and everything else is kind of the operations side of the equation. So like these things, I'm using. These things are sort of the same. We're splitting how we think about it. So on one side we've got accounting, and on the other side we've got operations, and then we're going to see what falls out from this. Hopefully that kind of makes sense.
Equal to everything else. And when we do that, so what we're going to do here is we're actually going to set expenses equal to everything else. And when we
so we're saying that our expenses equal everything else. So hopefully that sort of makes sense. I'm just setting that. I'm saying expenses are everything except marketing. That's just kind of like a terminology. So expenses are everything that we spend money on that isn't marketing.
When we do that, what'll actually happen is expenses and everything else will drop out of our profitability equation. And what we're left with is that in order for us to conduct a profitable business, our profit needs to be greater than our marketing. So the amount of surplus we make needs to be greater than the amount of effort we need to put in to sell that good or service. All right? So what I want to do is I want to take that, and I actually want to apply a couple of terms to bring it up to date in terms of the internet economy. So, in the internet economy, we call profit lifetime value. Again, that's the average amount of profit we're able to bring in on a per customer basis. So the average amount of profit that will generate over the lifetime of an average customer. And then on the right side, marketing, well, this is what we call customer acquisition cost. All right, that's the amount of money that we require to spend to acquire a customer. So we end up with lifetime value needs to be greater than customer acquisition cost in order for us to have a profitable business. All right, so I want to analyze this equation with one example, and we're going to start out actually taking a look at this right side, this customer acquisition cost. So how do we actually calculate that on a per customer basis, or a per product basis, or a per unit basis for our business? Well, since we're talking about the internet, we're going to take a look at a customer acquisition funnel in the age of the internet, really social media. So the way a customer acquisition funnel works is essentially we're moving from top to bottom, and we start with all of the available people in the world, and they funnel down, and out of the bottom pops a buyer. So there are several steps that we go through, that a customer moves through as they move through this funnel. The first step is lead generation, and this is really step one, where a customer hears about our business for the first time and indicates some amount of interest. Step two, is a drip campaign. Really, this is the ongoing upkeep of marketing. If you
noticed, I think I add contact capture in my new funnel, and this just leaves in drip. Well, I can't remember if I changed it or not, but this funnel might be slightly different than what's in the book.
yeah, yeah. If I'm a car dealership or something like that, I may send out a once a month notice on a deal, something like that. Basically, some sort of marketing effort that I'm putting in to keep my business top of mind. And then at the bottom, we have our buy, where somebody's actually purchasing our good or service. So as you see at the top of the funnel, it's wide, at the bottom it's narrow. And what that means is at each step, we're losing customers as we move through the process. And in social media, what the numbers actually show is, so how a social media campaign works is generally I'm running some sort of digital ad. A customer sees that, they click on it, they go to my website, they're either signing up for a free trial or they're giving me their email address. And that process, we see about a 6% success rate. So the success of my lead generation process is about 6%. Then I follow that up with a drip campaign, meaning I'm sending them weekly emails or something like that to try to convert them to buy my product. And what we see is about a 2% success rate for that drip campaign. So when we actually run the math, let's say we're spending 50 cents per click on our social media campaign. We divide that by our lead generation success rate, which is 6%. And then we divide that again by our drip campaign success rate, which is 2%. And what we find is that our customer acquisition cost for running this campaign is $400 per customer. Okay? So when we plug that back into our profitability equation, which again was lifetime value needing to be greater than customer acquisition cost, what we see is that our lifetime value needs to be greater than $400 for us to run this social media campaign.
It's actually $416. I was being nice here, but it's technically $416, and that's just 50 cents divided by that 6% success rate divided by a 2% success rate.
So what does that mean? What do we take away from it? Well, two things. One, there are certain products where that's going to be fine, where you're able to generate $400 off a customer and great, you're successful. Now there are certain types of business where that's not going to be profitable. Does that mean you should not undertake it? No, it doesn't necessarily. It means you need to think about it, but you also need to understand that this funnel created that number. So there's different ways that you can hijack this funnel to try to increase these percentages or bypass the percentages or lower these costs in order to lower all this entire the customer acquisition cost. But that's how we think about, are the interactions, are the efforts that we're putting into our business actually producing a profitable outcome? And in subsequent lectures, we'll talk about how do we improve that customer acquisition cost and what are other sorts of things that we can do in our business to make it easier for us to generate profit. So that's it. Thank you very much, and we'll talk to you in the next one.
We'll talk to you in the next one. All right. It's my YouTube fame. Okay. What's interesting about that? So what did I not talk about that's on here? So I talked about how you hijack that funnel, and one of the things that is labeled in this book is line jumpers. And what line jumpers are is people that don't follow your funnel. Okay, so if we think about your guys' 4-week funnel, a line jumper would be somebody that like buys essentially before they get to week 4. So you're assuming that the average customer moves through all of these steps. And what a line jumper is going to do is a line jumper is going to hurdle and they're going to buy early. All right. And what's great about that is what that line jumper does is it takes cost out of your marketing funnel, and that customer becomes more profitable than a customer that requires to go through your whole funnel. So when we talk about these dials, we want to think about, okay, well, how do I obviously, like, how do I increase my conversion rate? And most of the time, the way people think about that is like, if we think about our 4 Ps, it's like, where am I marketing? What is my content that I'm marketing? So like, what is the placement of my marketing? What is the promotion that I've got? What am I pushing at people to try to get them to quote unquote buy now? Do I need to increase that at high? Do I need to increase that or introduce that promotion at higher levels in the funnel? Maybe that moves people faster. So you can play with the conversion rate. We can play with how do we widen our funnel to get more people in, or we can play with how do we narrow our funnel such that less people drop off. Depending on what what you're experiencing, you may want to adjust this kind of aperture of your funnel. And then the last thing is, how do we increase kind of our line jumpers? How do we incentivize people to want to hurdle steps versus going all the way through. I guess the last thing I didn't mention was the like our cost per click number. So how do we lower the dollars per user from a paid ad campaign standpoint? Now, I know I'm in the internet, and I know I'm in social media, and I know the majority of people say, well, I'm not going to spend anything on marketing. I'm going to do organic marketing via, TikTok or Instagram or whatever. And the only thing that I would say is, cool, how do you get people to come and see your content? Even when I look at just what everybody has put out, what I observe is every single student said that they were going to, the funnels look very similar. We're going to, TikTok marketing. Okay, cool. So if we've got whatever, 36 students, and all of you are going to be marketing, via TikTok, and now multiply that by all the businesses that are going to be doing that, part of the problem becomes like, man, breaking through in this, just in the same funnel, becomes exceedingly difficult. And what the companies do that are building that funnel, so a company like Instagram or TikTok, what they're optimizing for is not to help your business. They're optimizing to how can they pull as much money out and keep you hooked on running, ads and giving them free content that gets people to come to their site. They aren't trying to push as much money to you as possible. They're trying to keep as much money for themselves as possible. And that's what they're tweaking on. Okay, that's how they're tweaking their system, and how it kind of contacts your business. So be careful, be creative, think outside the box. Everybody doesn't have to have the same funnel. And, personally, I love a moonshot funnel of like, this is how I think I'm going to do it. And it sounds off the wall, and it might be, but go do it and try it. You can always try, fall back to quote unquote the more traditional way of doing things. All right. Okay. Let's take a look at a couple examples here. And this is the first one that I've got. So I like this example just because, man, like, look at this thing, right? Like, there's a lot here. So the one thing you'll see that this is a 4-week campaign. The one thing I like is that it's specific by post. What are the posts going to look like? What are those specific posts? There's budgets for these things. There's KPIs. Okay, like, I know what you're going to track. What would be more interesting is like, okay, well, what is the click-through rate that indicates, success? Because if you know what that click rate is that indicates success, you can then measure, was I successful or not, versus just saying, okay, I'm going to measure click-through rate. So adding metrics to these things is important. You've got post-launch, like, okay, what are you going to, how are you going to follow up? So that's cool. That's great. I think the one thing that I'm seeing here is like, and this is my critique across the board, is that, again, this is like, it's a 6-post campaign. And in some respect, you're requiring somebody to see post 1. Like, it's just my experience with social media that in some respect, like it's going to take a long time for people to like see and engage with that brand. I just personally doubt that you're going to have a buyer pop out at the bottom after 6 posts. That's just not my experience with how social media actually works versus like, no, I kind of just put content out. And in some respect, like that content is just an evergreen forever. Like I would actually say all of the content that you produce is really like almost above lead generation. It's what's done to produce leads. And once those people fall into the lead funnel, then your funnel sort of actually starts. And what content generation is like, it's just kind of what you do. It's not even, it doesn't even become considered part of the marketing funnel. I know that's not how everybody approached this. I'm just providing commentary that, maybe it'll be helpful. Anyways, I love there's a great timeline here that indicates like how this thing flows. That's really cool. Love it. Keep it on your dashboard. This is fine. I would much rather see what are our expected KPIs versus, a mock-up of UI. But I thought this was great. I thought this was a great way to indicate a campaign. So nice work. Similar thing here. So you see we got 1, 2, 3, the weeks. I do like that these goals are kind of like, they're not necessarily KPIs, but they're like, oh, got it. Like I understand like the goal of what, quote unquote, this week is. Obviously we need to have like specific KPIs, which we've got when we come down here. So awesome that there's actually numbers on what we're trying to hit. Love it. And they're very, they're quite simple, right? So they're not like crazy things that are really difficult to track. So I thought this did a really nice job of being specific and kind of non-specific, I guess, at the same time. So great job there. Another one you can see we've got, 4 weeks. So again, we've got our actions in the week 1 that leads to actions in week 2. Again, I think just personally, I think this is moving at light speed, and I just doubt that that's going to be what actually happens. I also noticed that we've got launch. These are all launch plans, and in some respect, I think a bunch of you aren't thinking of social media as like, well, it's like, well, how long are you going to market? The answer in some respects is like forever. So like kind of thinking about like, okay, like, yeah, there is a launch, but then this really wants to be our forever plan. What do we do for forever from a marketing standpoint? What is our marketing plan? Marketing just is something that you do on an ongoing basis. It isn't necessarily, it's not this like we market, then we market, then we don't market in chunks. We market all the time. Okay, but again, you've got good goals. So nice job. All right, kind of same type of thing. I like these were another goals oriented, so I liked having these goals. Very specific or pretty specific on what your expected outcome is. So that's good to see. On our campaign timeline, again, you can see that we've got weeks. Just awareness, man, awareness takes a really long time. If you've already got a following, I guess the one thing is if you've already got a following and you're doing like an event style type thing where it is this just like, look, we're marketing for this moment in time. Like, okay, I guess I get this and I understand. And then what it is no, we're literally gonna repeat this 4-week marketing cycle time and time and time again. Like, okay, I guess I get that. There might be like a calendar that could be interesting where like you actually have multiple campaigns running in a row. So, week 1 through 4, we're going to target these people. And then we basically delay our campaign by another week and we target a different group of people and we target a different group of people. So you might actually have like 4 campaigns staggered that are always just, winding at the same time, but in different phases. I wrote a note here that one thing about the 4-week funnel is you got to think about that. Okay, as I'm moving through this funnel, like at the end of 4 weeks, the people that I've attracted in week 1, they fall out into week 4. And what do I do with those people? Am I boosting them back to week 1? Am I boosting them to week 2? Like, what am I? Are they just falling out and they're done? Like, as if that's the case, like, man, that feels like a lot of work that I don't want to, let go. So I'd really think about, like, okay, what do we, when they fall out, what do we do? We need to boost them back in, otherwise we're just losing, good leads. So just make sure that 4 week cycle isn't the end of the cycle. You want to think about, how do you keep re-engaging the people that you've attracted? Oh man, and I didn't even change my screen. All right, well, if you want to, sorry about that. Here's that second one that I talked about. So again, you can see the 3 weeks. You can see the general goals here. And then we've got the specific goals down here. Same thing with this one. We've got our plan and our weekly schedule. And then this last one, that's our schedule. And then we've got our dashboard down here. Apologies for that. Hopefully you can match up what I was saying with the screenshots. But I think you get the idea that, like, a lot of people did something very similar, which isn't necessarily, it's not to say anybody did anything wrong or bad. Maybe what I'm challenging, some of you that see that is like, oh, if everybody's doing the same thing, maybe I should be doing something different. And if you don't think that, that's okay too. All right. Let's come back to me. Okay. So let us talk about our final presentation. So let me get that up. Well, let me talk about these videos here real quick. So there are, on week 8, there's a couple of videos on just how to make a great presentation. I'm not going to go through those. I will let you go through those if you like. But I'm not going to go through those today. Let's take a look at our project instructions here. Okay, so our final deliverable is a 5 to 7 slide pitch deck or short video. On the slide deck, I would actually encourage you to go shorter versus longer, and try to distill this thing to the essence. So when I say the essence, like, what I want you to communicate is what it is that you're selling and how you're going to sell it. Okay, so your brand and your brand essence should come through in the presentation. You don't need to tell me what your brand and your brand essence is. That is just part of the presentation. Your presentation should be branded. I should understand, like, essentially what the company is and what the company does, like, basically by looking at the slide deck. I should be able to see, if you're doing yoga, there should be pictures of people doing yoga. It should be very obvious. Shouldn't be complex. There shouldn't be a whole lot of words required telling me that. Now, describing the product, maybe describing the product of a month subscription and what people get, and maybe there's gold, silver, bronze tiers or something. Like, okay, cool. Slide for product. Okay. What it is that we're selling. Then how we're going to sell it. Okay. How are you going to get the message to people? Where are you going to get it out? How are people going to learn and discover it about it? Okay. Again, that's like place and promotion. Our promotion meaning, like, what are we getting in front of people's eyeballs? The place, where are we getting it in front of their eyeballs? And then part of that promotion is again, like, what are we adding? What's the cherry on top that is going to cause them to take action now. And then the last thing that I left out is pricing. So if we're doing tiered pricing at gold, silver, bronze, adding our price there, making it compelling, you may want to introduce information on like why us versus what does the competition look like? Why us? But simplify these things. Don't have this, this matrix that's a 7x7 matrix where you show me 5 different competitors and I got to read all this text. Like, no, don't, like, make this, think of it like a physical flyer, like something I'm going to see and it's going to be on the street. I know like a digital presentation is not going to be on the street, but that's the mental framework, is to think about this presentation. It's going to be on the street and I'm going to come across it. And I want to be like, oh, look at this thing. Like, yeah, maybe I'll check it out. Right. That's the mentality that I want you to have. Versus something that is academic. Okay. Same thing goes if you'd rather go with a video, I'm okay with it. What I would like to have in that video is some sort of visual. There's all sorts of places you can get B-roll footage, for showing kind of what a product or service looks like. If you have a Mac, you can get iMovie to create a great movie. If you have a PC, you can get a Windows equivalent. You can do this stuff in YouTube. You can, there's a million different video creation platforms where you can cut in content and do just as good of a job, if not better, on video than via presentation. Okay. So that's what I want you to produce. That's what we're trying to bring this together and culminate, is create something that if picked up on the street or seen by a viewer kind of walking by a video billboard, they'd stop for a second and they'd look and they'd be like, oh, maybe I'll try that out. Okay. That's it. That's marketing. Marketing's a lot of trial and error. Marketing's a lot of failure. Marketing's mostly failure. Marketing's about taking small steps, being goal-oriented, thinking about, did that accomplish what I wanted it to accomplish for the amount of time and money I put into it, and having an iterative cycle of trial and error to improve on things. I know we live in a world that feels like the only thing that works is going viral. And that does work. It does work. Things do go viral. I assure you, things do go viral. I just challenge whether or not you will go viral. And I think the thing about going viral is, in my experience, it is a significant amount of luck. Now, there are people out there that will prove me wrong and say, I'm going to go viral, and they will go viral, and they have something, that allows them to do that. That has not been my experience, and I don't think it's most people's experience. So what this process is a process of continuous improvement versus a process of virality. And while it doesn't give you the peaky highs of like, oh, I produced a piece of content and boom, I got customers, what it does do is it creates a business that's sustainable in the long term. And I think that is the goal of what we're trying to create. All right. I think that's what I have for you. I hope you found this informative, educational, something in the middle. I know I've learned a bunch just talking through this stuff, so hopefully that came through as well. And I look forward to seeing what you produce. All right. Well, thank you for a wonderful semester, and take care.